Hi, welcome back to the Diaries. Today we have special guest Amanda Bevilacqua talking about her business as well as her experience with being a college athlete as well as a professional athlete.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Of course.
So we just want to talk a little bit about injury prevention, college athletics, the importance of physical therapy and rehab. So let's just start off, maybe just give a little bit of your background in terms of where you played, maybe any injuries you faced before you worked, and then we can kind of go into what you do now.
For sure, yeah. So I played at Canisius College. I played 4 years there, and I had a great experience there. I never had luckily any like traumatic injuries. I had some overuse type stuff that probably a lot of people deal with, but I was pretty lucky in that regard. I played most games. I think I missed like one game my career, but I had a good experience there. I played professionally in Germany for a short period of time, and then I came back to the States and started on my path to become a physical therapist. Went to the University of Miami for PT school, and then we moved around a little bit. We worked in Chicago for a bit, and then we moved back to Buffalo. We've been here for like 7 years, and I've owned Prescribed Motion for 4 years.
Wow, that's awesome. Do you get many college athletes coming in here, or what's kind of your clientele most likely been here?
It's a bit of a mix. We do get some college athletes with the local people, some high school athletes. The bulk of it is a little bit of like older adults who are still really physically active and want to be physically active, who have had an athletic, past and want to continue to be athletic and healthy. But yeah, it's a bit of a mix here, which is nice.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start kind of like chronologically working with, your high school athletes that come in here. What are you kind of noticing are limitations or things that you kind of are addressing with high school athletes to help them for when they do transition into college?
For that transition period, kind of like going from high school level to college. Yeah. Like any like transition in levels, it's obviously going to be faster, stronger. Like you're working against girls who are older, so trying to get up to that level of strength and quickness of the game and everything that you need, but also learning how to train smart, take care of your body, incorporate things like I never realized were so important at the time, but like nutrition, mental health, all of those other things that really, really impact you physically, sleep, recovery, really valuing those things at an early age is like incredibly, incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like obviously with basketball, what are kind of the common injuries for people that might not know? I mean, we kind of know like, jumper's knee, sprained ankles, like what are some things for everyone who might not like be aware of play, like what are the injuries that are most prevalent in kind of that age of like high school to college, basketball specific?
Basketball specific, yeah. I mean, this is probably multiple sports, but obviously, young girls with their ACLs getting torn, that's like way too common, which is sad. But, like you said, sprained ankles, and, a lot of times there are different things here and there like hips, low back, shoulders, depending on the person and their body makeup, but a lot of knees, ACLs, meniscus, ankles, and things like that.
Do you think that there's any preventative measures that people can be taking? And then kind of going off of that, do you think that a lot of athletes are weightlifting too early and that's kind of impacting their injuries?
Good questions. I think that there are definitely preventative measures that young athletes can take. Different things depending on how old athletes are. Like even talking about when kids are first getting into sports, like when they're 5 and 6, 7, 8, 9, like it should be playful, right? It shouldn't be like drills of whatever sport you're doing, basketball drills or whatever. It should be playful. They should be rolling and jumping over things, landing, like playing, And, as it starts to get more competitive and their bodies mature a little bit, I think that's a big misconception about weightlifting. It's good for kids to learn proper form with things. Obviously not loading them up with, a lot of weight that they're lifting, but weightlifting is not dangerous for kids. You don't want to be doing anything like pounding, like, squat or
Cleans.
like Olympics or like like cleans and stuff like that, where you're kind of pounding a lot, where their growth plates haven't fused yet, and there could be a little bit too much impact. But doing things like squats, even like learning a proper hip hinge for a deadlift, upper body, core work, hip work, learning that stuff at an early age and good form with it is huge. So it's kind of a misconception. So that could be a good thing to incorporate early on.
Yeah.
And then preventative wise, like moving forward from there, I think another thing that I wish I did more of when I was younger was like, it's hard for kids in high school to really grasp how important or how good things could be for you, but trying to connect, even doing drills, like warm-ups, I feel like a lot of teams have some type of injury prevention type warm-up or something that they do, but a lot of times, most if not all of the team just kind of like breezes through it. Everybody's talking, having a good time, getting warmed up, which is fine, but if you're like really taking that seriously, the best part of that is connecting your brain with your body and what you're doing in that moment. So I'd be more present with that kind of stuff. And
yeah, no, absolutely. I think in high school we used to kind of walk in the gym, maybe stretch, do like a little, what are those things called?
Frankenstein's.
Yeah, and then the first day of college, there's like a 10 or 15 minute timer that goes up, and it's like, okay, we're warming up. And I'm like, 10 minutes? Like, what are we gonna do for 10 minutes? And then they take you through a whole routine, and like you said, kind of breeze through it at first, and then I think when you start to get to our age, like junior and senior year, even in the 5th year, you do realize like how important that is, and how important staying after practice to like stretch or get in a cold tub and do stuff like that is, because you don't have that availability or even being taught to as a high schooler.
Totally, yeah, and the earlier you learn that stuff and the importance of it, because when you're going through all that warm-up stuff, like if you're really focused on what you're trying to do with it, what the goal is, and how it can incorporate into your game, it's connecting your brain with your body. Like you're training your neuromuscular system, which is incredibly powerful. So learning how to do that in an early age, like high school, obviously not much younger, you're probably not going to get that kind of focus and attention from a little kid, but yeah, starting to think about that kind of stuff in high school would be great.
Yeah, so okay, now let's kind of move forward. Now you're in college. What kind of things did you recognize right away that you were like, okay, I have to be better about this? Or like what things would you suggest people be really proactive about immediately when entering, like as a freshman, to adjust to the load that increases?
Yeah, totally. And things that, again, I would have done better, but like there are just some real basics that like people can master that can help them overall just feel entirely better overall. So things like proper sleep. I mean, it's tough because you're a freshman in college, you're obviously having fun too, and like you're meeting new people, you're doing things, but proper sleep and even tracking your sleep to see what kind of sleep you're getting. There's all kind of tools for that now. Proper nutrition, hydration, stress release, whether that's just like going for a walk, listening to music, like making time for stuff like that, that's not going for a run and pounding on your body, So yeah, sleep, hydration, nutrition, stress release, obviously exercise, but that's included in your program when you're there. But it even could be beneficial now to connect with like a sports dietitian or sports nutritionist, like even if it's once or twice, just to get on the right track with knowing for your level of exertion how many calories you need in your body to stay healthy, to prevent muscle breakdown, and what type of calories are best for you, So things like that are so readily available right now, especially online. You can connect with somebody from California if you're on the East Coast, and like they know exactly what would help you. So it's readily available and can really, really help you with that transition.
Yeah, now one thing I'm kind of curious about is like there's a lot of discourse about in the fitness community, athletics, of like supplements, kind of that type of stuff. So like for example, my freshman year, my mom was like, oh, you have to take, I was taking turmeric, I was taking like glucosamine, or I think that's what it's called. Like, I was taking a whole bunch of random stuff that she was like, this is going to heal your knee issues, because I had chronic patellar tendonitis when I first started.
Right.
And she was like, this is going to heal it, like this is it. And it did not, but I'm just curious, what about like things, what is it people take, creatine?
Yeah.
Like what do you what is your take on that from someone who obviously would know much better than me Googling, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think that along with the other things that I've mentioned is a powerful tool in the toolbox. It's not alone going to heal your patellar tendonitis, obviously. Like load management, proper exercises, sleep, recovery, hydration, nutrition, supplements are great in that program too. Proper supplements. You know, and those things are like turmeric and things like that. Those are more the natural route, and people, you know, really swear by that kind of stuff, and it probably has a significant impact. There's a lot of other things too, like you mentioned creatine. Creatine's one of like the oldest but still like tried and true things that is really, really beneficial for you. And not even just athletes. It's good for, you know, a lot of people with a lot of different issues. So supplements could be a great tool in the toolbox for that. Even things like collagen and finding good, you know, reliably sourced and well-made supplements is really important too, because there can be a lot of other stuff in there that you don't need.
Yeah, so if someone, let's say someone did want to take kind of that route, where would they start? Is that something, a conversation you have with your athletic trainer? Is that something you have with just like a doctor? Like, how do you kind of know what is going to work for you or what to believe on kind of like the internet or not?
I know, that's so hard. It really depends on your situation. So if you're in college and you're looking into that route of that kind of stuff to help you out, it depends on the relationship and how much trust you have with your coaches, your athletic trainer, your former teammate, or you know, your fellow teammates, if anybody does that. But you know, if you have somebody that you really trust and you think that they're really knowledgeable and you know you like the information that they give you as far as your athletic trainer, that'd be a good place to start. Definitely, sometimes a doctor, depending on how available they are to you, it could be tough to really have in-depth conversations about that. But I would seek out like a sports dietitian would be great with that. That's their lane, you know. So not only like what to eat, but what certain supplements and how your body can break that down and how it can help you. So a sports dietitian, sports nutritionist could be really beneficial.
Yeah. And sorry, you kind of touched on, you know, like trust and kind of with your coaches and athletic trainers. What advice would you have for someone who maybe is feeling like they're not getting what they need from their sport specific trainer? How would you kind of navigate that situation if you just don't connect with your coaches or something? You just feel like, you know, you might not have that relationship. Like, what would be your advice to still be able to get what you need if you don't kind of have that trusting relationship?
Yeah, totally. I didn't have that experience. I love my trainer, putting that out there. But I know a lot of people do have that, and that can be tough. You know, it's there a lot of times now. The trainers are taking care of multiple sports teams. They can be overworked and they have a lot of stuff, so might not either have time or you know the specialty to really handle whatever's coming in. But I would say again, kind of try to find your resources, whether that's somebody in your family, your teammates, former teammates. Obviously there's a lot of connections online now that you can make and reach out to, but you know, I'm a physical therapist. I have kind of a private clinic here where we see some local college athletes that seek out extra services. So if you know, I know that's not an available option for everybody, but if it's possible, even again to go in for 1 or 2 sessions, even to get checked out, evaluated thoroughly, to get some advice moving forward, and even to get some easily implementable like exercises and courses of action that you can take on your own to kind of implement like in your dorm room, doing exercises on your own on a regular basis that can put you on a good path kind of thing. So seeking out maybe some physical therapy outside of the university, if that's available to the person, would be a good route.
Yeah. How would you advise someone coming back from an injury and kind of like, I know it might be hard for you to discuss, but learning your own body in terms of like when you can push through pain versus when it might be hurting your injury, and like how have you navigated that with some of the athletes that you've rehabbed, like helping them understand where they're able to come back?
Yeah, it depends. That's a good question, and it's hard to answer a little bit because it does depend very specifically on the person. But in the injury, certain injuries there's a lot of research with, like ACLs and stuff like that, and there are well-documented timelines that you should be following. So if you're trying to get back, if you're trying to push too early to get back, it's not going to go well the majority of the time, and it's heavily researched. So, but with other things like little tweaks here and there are ways that you can monitor it, you know, and usually athletes are somewhat in tune with their bodies, whether it's muscle soreness or an acute injury, you know, and if it's, you have to be aware of what's going on when you're trying to reincorporate exercises. So if you're getting back into it a little bit, starting a few new things, and you notice an increase in swelling or heat or pain, obviously, like acute pain, then those aren't good signs. That's not what you want to push through. If it's muscle soreness, if it's a little bit of a sore joint or something, but it goes away within a couple hours, it's an okay progression, and then slowly continue on that path. But you know, you have to be aware of the red flags kind of as you're going back into it.
Yeah, especially because we've talked about this a lot. Like, the season is so long,
Yeah.
and so you're going from summer all the way till March and April, and there's a lot of just overuse. Do you have any tips for like how to navigate talking with your coaches or talking with your trainers and bringing up like, hey, I have this pain, this has been bothering me for X amount of time, and kind of like maybe any advice you have about coming to a trainer, coming to a physical therapist, and trying to talk about the injury or pain you're feeling without maybe having them feel like you're complaining or having
For sure.
excuses?
Yeah. A couple things related to that. So I think that if you're a hard worker in general and your teammates and your coaches know that about you, I don't think they should jump to the fact that you're like a complainer. So like they should know that you're not trying to go that route if you're really, you know, trying to help your team and you're a hard worker. If you're at that level, it's generally the case. So I would say just be honest, you know, and you're gonna have soreness all the time. So if you're not complaining all the time about being sore from a heavy lift or something like that, where your muscles are just sore, then when you go to your trainer or your coach and you say, you know, I'm noticing an increasing amount of pain in my knee after, you know, our individuals, and it's not terrible right now, but it has gotten a little bit worse. I just wanted to talk to somebody about it. You know, that's a pretty reasonable way to bring it up without sounding like you're complaining. And it's important to do that. You know, you have to be your own advocate so that you don't get to the place where you have a torn meniscus and you're gonna be out. You know, the coaches should appreciate that. And another thing is, depending on the point in the season or the off season, you can take it into your own hands where you incorporate some different types of training that takes stress and load off of your joints, but you can stay in shape, like biking, swimming, you know, walking, whatever it might be, boxing, you know, different things like that aren't basketball or running or sprinting or something like that. So take it into your own hands to take care of your body and avoid overuse type things when you can throughout the year.
Yeah, and you know, kind of speaking off that of like cross training, I think that there used to be, everyone played multiple sports. I grew up playing a bunch of different sports, and then as soon as I got to high school, it was like, okay, basketball. And the crazy thing is like now, like if you don't do that, you're not playing Division I. Like it is like
earlier.
It is earlier.
It's like school.
Literally middle school. Like if you haven't picked all you're doing all the time is basketball, you're not playing Division I. So how do you think, like what is your take on cross training for people of all ages, and even us now in college? Like what should we, like you're kind of building on, like what should we be doing in our off season? You know, you said swimming and biking, but like how can we, you know, how can you play at the Division I level while also not only playing basketball all the time and constant pounding?
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like I have a little 4.5-year-old right now, and so he's starting to get into sports and stuff, and I know it'll probably be hard as, you know, he gets to that age where kids are specializing so young, because I still subscribe to the fact that, you know, you shouldn't be doing that. You're gonna have, you know, like a torn UCL in your elbow from pitching when you're 10 years old if you're doing that like all year round, you know? So I think that if kids, like I said, they're playing, you know, they're learning how to use their bodies, landing, cutting, jumping, running, like in a playful way at a young age is the best thing. Playing as many sports as possible, developing like overall athleticism, I think generally helps you as you get to college age. So from an early age, just focusing on, you know, multiple sports, trying to just develop athleticism and enjoy moving, enjoy playing sports. But then as you get older and you're trying to actively avoid those overuse injuries, and you want to play Division I, or you are playing at a high level, you have to make a point of finding and seeking out ways of staying in shape that doesn't have, involve pounding. And usually it's obviously in the off season. Your schedules are crazy during the season, that you're not gonna like go for a swim on like an off day. Like, your body needs to rest, But when you're, postseason, off season, even preseason, like, you're trying to get your wind up and stuff like that, and incorporating non-pounding activities like even like spinning and swimming are probably the two best examples that you can really get a good workout in, work your body, little to no pounding, and just create a routine for yourself, like, you can still work on your skill work, your ball handling, your shooting, your everything, but you're not running around, you're not sprinting every day, you're getting a little break from like drill specific basketball stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, one thing that was a transition from high school to college was the emphasis on like heart rate in workouts, and so we were always wearing heart rate monitors, and that's how we tracked how intense the workouts were. And I think that's honestly becoming more accessible to just an average person through Apple Watches and stuff like that. So would you recommend that that's something that high schoolers kind of incorporate into these cross-training workouts to see like intervals and heart rates and stuff like that?
Yeah, I love that stuff. Like, the more objective data you can get about what you're doing, like, that's what I mentioned with sleep too, some of those similar things. I don't love wearing a watch to sleep, but they have other things like, they have the Whoop, which is still a wristband, but they have different rings and stuff now that track all that, and I love it because it gives you all the data. It tells you, almost like your readiness to perform that day too. So it gives you your sleep score, your recovery score, and then it tracks your heart rate as you're doing workouts and things like that. So you can tell, like, if you're feeling, especially for women, young girls, we go through different cycles throughout the month, so it's good to track how we're doing that day and to listen to our bodies. If you're having a day or a few days where you're just feeling sluggish, or you're feeling like not yourself, and that can easily kind of snowball a little bit mentally, even if you're really pushing yourself to get ready for something. But having some objective data to say, all right, this is just where I'm at right now, I need to give myself a break and do what I can to get myself through this period, and then I'm going to have more energy after that, and I'll focus on my sleep, my hydration, my nutrition, all the other aspects of health that I can do at this moment, and then kind of follow the data as far as how you're performing throughout the rest of that week or that month.
Yeah,
I love those things.
I actually think that's one thing that's not talked about enough in like women's sports, and even in college a little bit, is that you're kind of going to be performing different every single week. And obviously it's hard because your team or your coaches can't be like, oh, we're going to take today off because she's tired and she's in a hard week, because we're all going to be on like a different track and a different cycle. But I think that's something that's becoming more popular and more talked about, but that's not that. I didn't even know about that really until like recently, and I feel like I'm way too old to have been training this long without knowing that was impacting me.
It's one of those things that like societally we just like don't talk about, or women don't talk about, which I think that trend is changing in a lot of ways. Like, we're talking about this in this regard, but like postpartum stuff is a lot more talked about now, and what people can do, what women can do. So in general, I think a lot of women's ailments and just women's lives are considered more with daily life, and not like you said, not that you can necessarily like take the day off, or like the whole team can do much about it that day, but you can try your best to focus on the other aspects of your health that you can to optimize your performance and how you're feeling and your recovery and everything like that.
Yeah, and this is just kind of a quick thing of like, I've heard this, but I just was wondering, like, what is it true, or kind of like addressing, like, people say that women are more likely to get injured when they're on their periods. And I think about like my experience, and I'm like, actually, all of mine have been during that week. So like, obviously, you can't sit out, but like, how can you, is there any way to mitigate any of that kind of like risk? When you're on that week, you're like, is it true that your injury risk is higher, and like how can you affect that if it is true?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention when you said that too. So it definitely affects because there's a lot of information about it specifically with ACLs because that is such a researched topic. But yeah, it is true that, at different points in your hormonal levels throughout the month, you're more apt to get injured. In these research studies, they say you're more apt to tear your ACL at that point, but because of how your hormones affect like your ligaments, your tendons, your elasticity in your body, and things like that. So the things that you can do to help mitigate it, it's tough because it's not like that week you're gonna do something differently. Right. It's kind of what you've been doing, right? Mm-hmm. Like we talked about being more aware from an early age about connecting your brain with your body, having a good sense of your neuromuscular control when you're doing these training type drills of, jumping, landing, cutting, being aware of like how that can influence your body, and taking that into consideration during those weeks when, you might be on your period, or you're not feeling well or something like that, and relying on your previous training to protect you, and your strength and how you take care of your body. So it's not like, unfortunately, you can necessarily do anything differently that week other than those other things I mentioned, like overall health. Right. But trying to incorporate that as part of your training, just connecting your brain with your body more.
Yeah, I think one reason why it would still be important to track it is just for mental health reasons of like, okay, I might not perform my best today, but don't take it out on yourself. Don't be after practice like negatively talking to yourself about how you didn't perform as well as someone else, because if you're aware of what weeks or what days you might not be playing as well, you can at least kind of give yourself some grace and like understand scientifically why you might be feeling slower or weaker than you did the day before, or why last week you benched a certain weight and now this way it's not going up as fast.
100%. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Like having objective, numerical data to like show you, take it easy on yourself right now, okay? Like not like go ahead and sit on the sideline, but like, if you didn't have your best day, don't get down on yourself. Exactly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, transitioning from like college to now, let's say like people that maybe just finished college basketball. So like now you're at the end of your career, maybe you just graduated. Like how can you, like what advice do you have to adjust to now you're not really keeping up with the same intensity? Like how can you structure like workouts? How can you find those things while also maybe not continuing to pound and kind of like, because a lot of these injuries, like these knee things will continue, and I don't want to be, like I think about myself, I'm like, I don't want to be 30 and I'm like, can't run a couple miles because of all of the, because of all of the pounding, and like now obviously, my knees are in a better spot, I do all my yoga and stuff like that, but what would you say for people who do struggle with like ongoing injuries or like shoulder reconstructions, like how can you limit those after you're done playing?
Again, that will be different for everybody, so it depends on the person. Like even in my experience, I graduated and I had some teammates who were like, I honestly could not touch a basketball for the rest of my life and I'd be good. But for me, I still really loved it, so I wanted to like, I found women's leagues and stuff like that, and I still loved it, I still wanted to play. But I would say, don't feel like you have to continue at the level of intensity, obviously, that you've been playing at the previous 4 or 5 years, because that's an elite level. And if you're not competing, competitively, if you don't continue on with that as your career, then find something that brings you joy that you can do for exercise, and if that's basketball, that's great, but continue to take care of your body with a lot of times, and we see this in people here with like an advancing age population where they want to continue to be active, but they don't realize why they necessarily can't do things without getting injured like they used to. And our bodies change, and we need to do things throughout our life and start incorporating things, exercises to stay strong in certain ways that we didn't have to do when we were younger. Our bodies are pretty resilient in general, but we bounce back faster at a younger age from things like that. So finding and seeking out the exercise and the things you need to do to be able to stay healthy while you're doing whatever you're doing athletically or for exercise or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so thank you so much for letting us sit down with you and answer all these questions. I know that some of the things we talked about are just not talked about enough, and you don't get access to this knowledge until you're in college, which, like we talked about, might be too late because there are things you should start incorporating at a younger age. But yeah, if you have any last closing remarks for anybody.
No, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's awesome. Like, I mentioned this to you guys before we started, but I think it's so cool. Like, the younger generations are just like more up on all this stuff. So I say that I didn't do it when I was younger, but I feel like this could be so applicable for girls that are coming up, you know, kids that are coming up into high school, into college, because I feel like kids at a younger age now are seeking out more things to help advance themselves further in a safe and healthy way. I said, like, even you guys doing this podcast is so great. You're still in college and you're already, you know, on this track to do this kind of stuff is so cool, and that didn't happen back then. So I think it's great, and it makes me hopeful for this generation coming up too, that like even athletically that kids will start incorporating all of these other things that will help them stay healthy and be strong and have good careers too.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
And I hope you guys come back for the next episode.